Before we begin, we want to make this exceptionally clear that just because somebody is Pakistani, it does not mean they're involved in any of the behaviour we'll talk about today. Please do not stereotype an entire community, and please do not use what we will address today to push any type of hatred against the Pakistani community. We have made this video for 3 reasons. The first being that the kinship voting is detrimental to the democratic process. The second reason is for the Pakistani community. No child raised in a Pakistani home should have to put up with the racist, sexist, misogynistic ethnic tribal voting system known as kinship voting. Those who support it should be deeply ashamed that they have helped enrich a chosen few Pakistani elders to the detriment of those in their own community, and they have done this for no other reason than because of their ethnicity. The third reason is that the culture of kinship voting creates a dangerous culture of silence in the Pakistani communities. It teaches that anybody who breaks the silence about this cultural practice must be ostracised. It allows dangerous paedophiles in the Pakistani community to groom white and Sikh children all over the UK. There is no difference between the culture of the white community, in which children are being molested by priests from the 1940s to the 1990s, and the culture of the Pakistani community today. All over England there exists Pakistani networks based upon ethnicity going back generations to Pakistan, and these allegiances are stronger than family. To understand kinship voting and how incidents like the Asons scandal, in which Labour councillor Akhtar Zaman used his influence over the council leader Clifford to force him to hand £300,000 of taxpayers' money to Akhtar's Pakistani friends, the Akhtar brothers, we first need to understand the history of the Pakistani community in England. This short article from 2015 by the BBC explains the history of Pakistani migration to Bradford, which is identical to that of Bolton. Pakistani men began arriving in Bradford from the mid-1950s. They were mainly single men who were encouraged to travel to the UK to work in the mills and factories. They relied on each other for support and basic survival. In the 1960s, Britain witnessed a chain of migration from the subcontinent, a result of the existing migrants of inviting other Pakistanis into the country through means of employment. This was operated largely through family networks. The single men who had migrated to the UK were reunited with their families by the 1980s. The fantasy of returning home soon dwindled as families settled and grew in the industrial towns and cities across the UK. Many recognised they had better job opportunities here, their children will receive quality education, and generally an improved quality of life. But they soon realised that they needed advice to fill out certain forms, or to gain planning permission for building a mosque or halal butchers. Image caption: in 1960, Pakistani men living in Bradford sought out community leaders to represent their interests. Thus they sought out from among them the adequately educated who were literate and had a basic understanding of the political system. These men then acted on their behalf and became their representatives, most commonly known as community leaders. It is important to note that women at that time played little or no role in any of the decision making. Many of them were new to the UK and were expected to care for the extended family and the children. In addition, it was seen to be a man's job to make the decisions, and a woman's voice was neither appreciated nor welcome. But also remember, this was the mood in politics in general at the time, and it was not just a Pakistan phenomenon. Politicians soon recognised the influence of the community leaders. They realised that these appointed men could effectively grant them a block vote akin to that of the unions. The block vote was secured by heads of clans telling their families for whom to vote. Fatima Patel, editor of the Asian Sunday newspaper, which is published in Bradford and London, points out, if someone is offering you a number of votes, which politician wouldn't take it? There have been articles for many years and government policies trying to tackle the cultural issues within the Pakistani community by the establishment of this kinship voting. There is nothing illegal in a community standing together to vote for a party that they feel represents them. But that is not what's happening with the Pakistani community. The press and government call the Pakistani community voting practices kinship networks. Its real name is Biradari clans, meaning brotherhood. They are the extended clan or tribal network that influenced the UK's nearly 1 million strong Pakistani community. The Baderi clans are alive and well in the ward of Halliwell, with Akhtar Zaman, the Asian Elder, and Clifford Morris and Linda Thomas both mockingly referred to as useful white faces. It is not a coincidence that both the former council leader Clifford Morris and deputy council leader Linda Thomas, who is now the council leader, happen to be councillors in Halliwell. Akhtar Zaman controls this council, and he does it through the voting power he holds over Clifford Morris and Linda Thomas being elected at his whim with the voting support of the Pakistani voters in Halliwell. At this very moment in time, the Halliwell Labour Party branch is flooded with Pakistani men. A significant number have been allowed to exploit the unemployed membership rates, and Akhtar is holding Labour Party meetings in his house, which we allege is to prevent Asian women from attending. This is 2018. This is your Bolton Labour Party representing women's rights. Akhtar's control in Halliwell allows him to dictate what happens in the Labour Party and Bolton Council. And we can assure you that even though the Pakistani community is a minority, people like Akhtar Zaman are controlling our town of Bolton through its politics. Wherever you find Baraderi clans in the UK, this caste-based, misogynistic, male-dominated system led by Pakistani elders such as Akhtar Zaman, they exploit the ignorance of the Pakistani community to enrich themselves. As an example of this, we've spoken to countless members of the Pakistani community in Halliwell, and every single one of them that we spoke to believed that Akhtar Zaman did not receive a wage for being a councillor. Not only did they believe this, they told us how the Pakistani community should always vote Labour, because if they didn't, the racist kafar, which is non-Muslim outsiders, would gain power. There are thousands of people in the Pakistani community who mistakenly believe that people are racist and hate-filled towards them because they're Pakistani and Muslim. The truth is that the hatred from other communities stems from the Pakistani community electing people like Akhtar Zaman. When Akhtar attempts to defraud this council of £300,000 to hand to his Pakistani friends the Akram brothers, that hatred becomes hard to challenge. When planning applications for mosques are always passed, the other communities in Bolton begin to see special treatment for the Pakistani community, and that hatred grows. We could list special privileges that Runworth, Great Lever and Halliwell receive, but everybody in Bolton already knows this. To gain those special privileges spits in the face of what it means to be British, a sense of fair play and equal treatment for all, regardless of race or religion. If the Pakistani community keeps voting for Akhtar and people like him who represent the Baderi clans, then on your heads be it, because that future will create dangerous resentment against your community. The Baderi clans are dangerous organisations that have been involved in block voting, fraud, money laundering and criminal activity such as the heroin trade. The public perception should be perceived as a Pakistani mafia that the police and media intentionally fail to acknowledge for fear that exposure would lose certain political parties large amounts of votes. This is a community that silences politicians by punishing them with the threat of withdrawal of their vote and giving it to anybody who would ensure that the culture of silence is maintained. Any politicians who would dare criticise the Pakistani community for its cultural issues, even if it is to help them in the long run, it's career suicide.
I don't think you can label a whole community. I think what you have to do is label those that perpetrate disgusting and disgraceful crimes against people, and they can be from any community. They can be white, they can be black, they can be any community, but they have to be dealt with as the crime of what it is.
In every Pakistani ward in the UK, it exists, in vastly varying degrees. In one ward, it is as simple as a young Asian family member expected to hand their voting forms to their elder. In other wards, it can involve serious criminal activity such as money laundering and organised crime, with allegations that councillors would use their positions of power to protect those involved in the criminal world. People like our deputy leader of the council, Labour councillor Abraham Adia, who provided a character reference for Akhtar, who had been caught with £92,000 of criminal cash. Despite the fact Akhtar refused to cooperate with police and provide details of the source of this money, that did not stop Labour councillor Abraham Adia providing a glowing character reference. Akhtar was sentenced to only 16 months in prison, suspended for 2 years, plus 275 hours unpaid work. As we have previously discussed, voting in line with your community is not illegal. It's really no different than joining Unison and then being expected to join Labour. Well, the difference with the kinship voting of the Pakistani community is that people are being deprived of their right to vote freely. They're either being coerced into voting or they're being exploited by not understanding what they're signing because they can't read English. The men can speak and write English, but the women, some who have been here for decades, have still not been able to learn English. And this is more often than not because of how insular the Pakistani community and culture is towards women. They are treated like second-class citizens. Eric Pickles recently, in the last few years, attempted to tackle the cultural issues in the Pakistani community with the voter ID initiatives. A few suggestions had been ID at the polling stations and making it illegal for anybody to handle anybody else's voting form. However, these will do almost nothing because it expects family members to turn on one another and inform the police, which is absurd. Bolton Labour was initially set to be involved in the voter ID trial, but as the trial grew closer, they took action to drop out of the voter ID trial, which we allege was to protect the kinship voting of the Pakistani community and therefore protect their voting bloc. The information we have provided is factual, backed up by articles, academic papers, government reports and first-hand accounts. There is only one thing left to say. If you are a Labour supporter or Labour Party member, you need to take a good, long, hard look at the evidence we've discussed today. If you vote Labour at the local elections for 2018, you are voting to protect a racist, misogynistic, male-dominated system that ensures women are treated like second-class citizens. The culture of silence that prevails from that culture is no different from the church and priesthood which molested children. This is why Asian grooming gangs are being discovered all over the UK. If you vote Labour, you are indirectly protecting all of those things. We are not asking you to vote for any other party. We are only asking that you don't vote Labour, that you send a clear message to Labour nationally that the actions of your local Bolton Labour party are not acceptable, that the Asons scandal and the Akhtar Zaman being block voted in by kinship voting has no place in our society regardless of political party. Well, we hope to bring you another video before the elections about child grooming and the culture of silence in the Pakistani community, but in all honesty, it's draining making these videos and being called nothing but white supremacist and racist because we actually give a shit and want things to change. Peace out.